Santa Clara is not in wait-and-see mode, and that is exactly the kind of moment that separates a strong roster from a championship roster. When this franchise starts getting linked to more depth in the backfield, sees a proven name enter the trade conversation, studies immediate pass rush help, and still has a backup quarterback who could become a starter somewhere else, the read gets real fast. The Niners know they do not have room to miss during this window. Today's conversation is not about comfort, it is about answers. So if you follow this team like you feel every signal, subscribe and stay with me, because there is movement here that deserves a real fan reaction. And I'm going to say this with zero hesitation. If San Francisco is seriously doing heavy work on Mike Washington, it is not because this offense needs decoration. It is because this backfield still needs real protection behind Christian McCaffrey. Brian Robinson Jr. is gone in free agency. Jordan James may get a real shot as the primary backup, but acting like that alone solves the problem would be way too soft for a team trying to fight at the top. McCaffrey is still a monster. Nobody is debating that, but he is heading toward 30, and the injury history is long enough that this staff has to think one step ahead before this turns into an emergency. That is where Washington becomes such an interesting name. The 2025 production jumps out right away. Over 1,000 rushing yards, useful receiving output, and the kind of workhorse profile that still brings speed with it. That mix fits what Shanahan wants. But this is also where nobody should pretend everything is clean, because there is one issue that matters a lot in this building: ball security. In this system, that is not some little footnote. That becomes trust, touches, snaps, and very quickly, your spot in the rotation. Isaac Guerendo already found out how harsh that reality can get. There is another layer the fan base has to deal with too. The recent track record of the Niners drafting running backs does not exactly bring peace of mind. Trey Sermon became a painful miss. Elijah Mitchell did not hold the path. And in a lot of cases, the more useful success stories came from names who entered the building without draft hype. So if Mike Washington is still there at 58, the question is not just talent. It is whether San Francisco truly believes it can develop this package without repeating an old mistake. Because depth on paper does not win in January. Reliable depth does. Now look at how this whole conversation shifts when the name entering the picture is Cole Kmet. Because now we are not just talking about filling a hole. Now we are talking about changing the architecture of the offense. At first glance, a lot of people are going to push back, and honestly, that makes sense. George Kittle just got long-term security. Jake Tongas got brought back. Tight end does not look like the biggest emergency on the roster today. But if you stop the read there, you are stopping way too early. In Kyle Shanahan's offense, a useful piece is never extra if it opens formations, protects the quarterback, and creates another problem for the defense. That is why this market connection got people paying attention when the trade analysis involving Chicago started circulating. Kmet is still a relevant player for the Bears. He is under contract through 2027, and the production is still good enough to keep real value attached to his name. This is not one of those names thrown into a rumor just because it sounds big. He is a big-bodied, experienced tight end who can help in the passing game and hold up in heavier personnel without killing the flow of the offense. In other words, he is exactly the type of player who would not force the Niners to change their identity. He would push that identity into an even more uncomfortable place for the defense. And that is why this possibility feels so interesting if you are thinking like a contender. If the price really came down to the kind of draft capital that has been floated, San Francisco would have to decide whether giving up future ammo is worth the immediate versatility around Brock Purdy, George Kittle, and the play-action game. Defenses already struggle with the stress this system creates. Add another dependable body into that picture, and suddenly you are talking about more combinations, more functional blocking, more flexibility near the line, and more chances to punish mismatches. It is not a must-do move, but it is not some throwaway rumor either. It is one of those ideas that feels strange for 5 seconds and then starts making way too much sense. And this is where the conversation gets uncomfortable for real. Because when a mock draft sends Akheem Mesidor to San Francisco at pick 27, nobody is talking about a luxury pick. They are talking about a need John Lynch himself has already acknowledged. This pass rush needs help opposite Nick Bosa. It needs real weight right now. It needs somebody who can arrive and hit, not just a nice-looking project on paper. From that angle, it is easy to understand why Mesidor is showing up in this range. The fit is there. The strength is there. The idea of a 3-down defender who plays with violence and can contribute early is there too. But pick 27 is not a place for lazy thinking. Mesidor is going to be 25 on draft day. The real breakout came late in his college journey. And that brings the question that never fully goes away. Was that jump the real thing? Or was it one season that popped at the right time? That is the difference between responding to a need and reaching out of urgency. San Francisco may absolutely look at the 2025 tape and see a player who can help fast, especially in a window where instant contribution matters a lot. But the first round is not where you fool yourself out of desperation, especially when there is also a foot injury in the recent history and a development curve that was not exactly smooth from the start. At the same time, you also cannot act like age alone settles the argument against him. If he comes in and makes an immediate impact, the 2029 conversation is not going to matter nearly as much as what he does in 2026. The bigger question is this: does he actually take pressure off Bosa and Michael Williams, or does he just make a weak rotation a little less weak? That answer changes everything. Because the 49ers do not just need another edge in the room, they need somebody who changes the math for opposing protection. So let me throw this to the Niners war room in the comments. If the board falls this way, are you riding with Mesidor at 27 because of the pressure of the moment? Or are you going with a cleaner profile for a pick that needs to turn into impact early? And the fourth story hits a different kind of pride in Santa Clara, because it gets into something the 49ers do better than a lot of people want to admit: rebuilding quarterback value. Mac Jones came in with doubt all around him, with people on the outside already talking like his career had shown everything it was ever going to show. But what he did in 2025 changed the tone of that conversation. When Brock Purdy went down, Jones stepped into a battered roster, started 9 games, appeared in 11 overall, and played some of the most efficient football of his career. That was not background noise. That was real contribution from a team that stayed alive. That is why the projections about his future keep getting louder. If Purdy stays healthy all through 2026, Jones probably goes back to living in that premium backup role, the guy who supports the system, keeps the offense stable, and then starts showing up on the radar of quarterback-needy teams. And honestly, that tracks. Shanahan has already shown he can help reset the value of quarterbacks whose careers looked stuck. Sam Darnold left San Francisco carrying a different kind of market respect. Now that comparison is naturally showing up around Mac, not because the paths are identical, but because the effect of this environment is real, and the league sees it. The most interesting part is that the Niners do not seem to be in any rush to move him right now, and they are right not to be. If your backup has value, knows the system, and already proved he can keep the offense alive when things get messy, trading him for less than he is worth would weaken your present for maybe very little future gain. So this is not really about some immediate contract problem. This is about an asset whose value has grown inside the building. And smart contenders do not dump useful assets just to satisfy off-season rumor season. At the end of the day, today's picture in Santa Clara is a team moving around pressure points without pretending the roster is finished just because the names look strong on paper. There is a real debate about backfield depth, a possible offensive addition that could change the shape of certain packages, a draft decision that could directly affect the pass rush, and a backup quarterback who has turned into a legitimate asset. That is contender pressure, and the Niners have to read all of it with ambition and discipline at the same time. Now, I want the fan base in the comments. Which one of these 4 stories impacts the team's immediate future the most? And if you live 49ers football every day, subscribe to the channel, because we are back tomorrow.